Yo, 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 welcome to episode 8 of the Elite Wrestling Club podcast, where we explore individuals' dreams and the unwavering persistence to achieve them on and off the mat. Hi, I'm your host, Lance Runyon, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for another inspiring episode. In this episode, we will be going behind the scenes with Allyson Schwab, who is known as head coach's wife, photographer, and the leader of hashtag Team Shit Show. We will share personal stories and valuable insights, and we're excited to bring you a fascinating conversation that will inspire and motivate you to chase your dreams and achieve greatness both on and off the mat. So without further ado, let's welcome Allyson Schwab and dive into the Elite Wrestling Club podcast world. So I wanted to bring Allyson on to not only share her perspective as head coach's wife, but also the different lessons and values that she's learned through her journey as an athlete, photographer, coach's wife, and just the perspective she has on the Panthertrain. And she also has her own personal blog called Graceful Detours that you may have seen before. Appreciate you taking the time to come on the episode with me. I'm looking forward to it. So
Thanks for having me. Thanks for getting me away from my kids for a little bit.
yeah, I mean, if you want to give a little background of kind of what you got going on at home every day.
Oh, jeez. I don't know if we have enough time for like a full background, but no, we have me and Doug, we have been married for 15 years the end of this June, so June 28th. We have four kids, two boys. Hayden is 15. Hendrix is going to be 14 tomorrow. And then we have twin girls, Jenna and Lennon, who turned 6 in May. So our house is on rock and roll all the time.
Yeah, especially with that puppy, somewhat puppy, big puppy.
Yes, I forgot. We have a dog. So we have a dog, Smalls, who's been around for a while, and he's like small and and contained. And then I decided to have, I guess, like a midlife crisis and get a puppy and got a golden retriever lab mix. And he is off his rocker, and his name is Tater. He looked like a little tater tot when he was like a little puppy roaming around. And I didn't really give Doug a choice and was like, we're getting a puppy. And which is funny because the first time that we got a dog, I was like, no, 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 no. Like, we have so much going on. So this time, though, it's like, why not just have more children, more, things going on, careers and side hustles, or, we have a nonprofit. And so let's just like go ahead and add a puppy to the mix because, like, why not? Right. I felt like our content was you know, getting a little stale
Yeah,
for
I
you.
mean, I was honestly surprised when you guys got a puppy for sure. I mean, you got what, 5 or 6 different babysitters.
That's on like a good month. Like, I mean, I have to because they're all involved in their own things. And at any one time, we could have no joke, we could have like three babysitters doing something, like one with the twins, one running a kid to practice, one picking up another one, especially when Hendrix is playing football. So none of our kids can like drive on their own yet. And so it requires a ton of help. And the one thing that we've been super lucky with is the amount of help that we've gotten here in Cedar Falls and with the UNI community, and the like quality of help. Like our girls, which I call them our girls, our babysitters are absolutely amazing. So, and they more or less like they do life with us. It's not just like a transactional thing. Like, they send me pictures as they know that that's like, the weight of my heart. And they tell me like funny quotes to write down that the girls say with them, and they check in and say like, how was your trip, or how are they doing? They follow us along all the time. So they're more or less a part of our family and not just a babysitter. And that's worked really well for us because, I mean, we've had Morgan, for instance, we've had Morgan for 4 years. So she's literally been through the entire process of our girls being diagnosed with autism, to like now, like the whole span of that. Like she's been a part of our lives, and um, they have to be part of our family for as much as they're with us. Then they have to be able to kind of go with the flow, know that they're walking into probably a disaster most of the time. They see me and Doug in real life. They see our marriage in real life. They see, just parenting highs and lows. And so the only way for it to work the way it does is for them to be more or less a part of our family.
Yeah, and just you talking about um, them being along, so you just almost have to bring them in and make them a part of the family. And I feel like that's also something you do to who you call your big kids, but us wrestlers on the team. Um, how did you get that perspective to want to cultivate those relationships, I guess?
Well, before you and we were at Iowa for 4 years, and I had three really strong women in my life that more or less I learned from before I came here about being like a head coach's wife. And so I had Kathy Gable and Jenny Brands and Michelle Brands and watched them. Live that life of building relationships with their athletes and how they cared for them, how they cared for their husband during season or during training. They had all been through what I was going through with Doug, which was him still competing and then him making the transition from being a competitor to being a coach. And so that would be like my first thing. And the second thing is that I really tried to do what I wanted in college, which was have a family away from home, in the best way I feel like to do that is for kids to be in our home and to see, just it's just interesting watching you guys sometimes walk around and the things that you notice or the pictures on the walls and stuff, but more or less like being able to just have a home cooked meal or whatever meal, free meal, and then just lay on the couch and kind of get away from school and maybe like your dorm and all those things. And it's just nice to be able to have that like homey feel. And that's what we want to create is I want to create an environment that um, not only is loving and caring for you, but is also an environment that my kids don't feel like that they're losing their dad to because we have created this like family, right? So
Hmm.
they're not saying, "Oh, dad's at work." They're you guys are just an extension of our family. Like, yes, he's at work, but you're really um, you know, they know that he's going and giving to people that we love and care for. It's not something that he just shows up for and is like, puts in his time and leaves. It's something that really fuels his passion. And then, therefore, my kids get to see that what it looks like to one, follow your passion, but two, care about the people that you work with. And three, you guys give back to us just as much as we give to you, whether that's coming over and interacting with the kids, whether that's um, I've called and you've given rides, you've picked up the boys at dance to take them to practice from because I couldn't leave the girls at dance. Like, it just for it to work well and for it to be an environment where I'm not resentful as a coach's wife that a lot of times you guys get the best of him, and we get kind of like what's left energy wise. It has to be an environment that we love and that both parties like thrive in, right? It's really been
Hmm.
interesting and fun to watch my boys now because they're getting older, right? Because they've watched you guys and it's been cool to go to duels and stuff, but now they're coming home and they're talking about how you guys performed. They're talking about moves that you did or things that they did in practice, and they're being able to equate it to you guys. I'm thankful that they have a perspective of what you guys are like outside of the mat, like you meeting with Hendrix, and that they know that they have someone else that can pour into them because just like probably your parents needed, we can tell them everything, but it means so much more when it's coming from someone else. So, in order for our family to function at the highest, and for Doug to be able to do his job the best, then we have to have this family uh, atmosphere surrounding like both sides.
Yeah, and I mean, just watching your boys grow up a little bit, it's like now they're just around all the time, whether they're lifting while we have practice or they're just sitting in and watching or they show up early for their practice so they can watch and then play a game with whoever's around after that'll stay around and play with them. But yeah, it's been cool. And then you talk about like Doug being that way too. It's like he'll just show up at people's houses sometime and check on them and see how they're doing. I remember one time I was like sick. I texted him. I'm like, hey coach, like, I don't think I can make it to practice today. Like, I've been in bed all day. I didn't go to class. Like, all of a sudden I hear this knocking and then all of a sudden these footsteps running down the stairs. And I was like, oh, hey coach. He's like, hey buddy, how you doing? I think the reason he showed up was like deeper than that because like we had the captain's vote that day, but yeah, I was, and he does it often too, it's like unannounced, but you always got to be ready for Doug to show up.
Yes. And that's something that's important to him because, um, I mean, outside of just the fact that, like, if you are a competitor and you know that your coach cares for you regardless of your outcome, regardless of your results, regardless of, um, you know, uh, doing exactly what he says or whatever, like, you're going to perform better, right? And the thing that I love about Doug is that he's taken things that he's seen at other places and then figured out what's worked for him. And one of those things is that he knows that he wants his legacy in coaching to be not in like buildings or accolades, but more or less the humans that have been developed in throughout his program, and being a person that he says that he is. Like, that's important to him, that like you're not just ours for these 5 years or 6 or 7, but you're ours for, like your wedding and your first baby and
Yep.
maybe some hardship that's going to be down the road. And I love it because I'll stumble across one of our alumni, like something that they're doing. Kurt Mays is getting ready to go start like a surgical program. And so I text Doug and I'm like, hey, did you see this? And he's like, yeah, I talked to him. And I'm like, okay. Like, I'm always like last to the party. He does a very good job, I feel like, of really trying to keep up with everyone and just checking in on them. And I feel like that he does a good job of building that relationship before they come into the program, continuing it throughout, and then afterwards as well.
So we've already kind of got into you being like a coach's wife and developing that like family culture a little bit. So, um, what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of being Doug's wife or a head coach's wife?
Oh, um, there's a few things. I mean, one, I always tell him I'm jealous in a way that I get to watch him carry out a passion. It took me a while to really figure out what I wanted to do, and mine kind of changed a little bit once we had kids. And I wanted to go in the medical field, and it just didn't work out. And then we had kids, and it was kind of one of those things where, like, okay, in Doug's training, like he's still competing. Like, I can't imagine if I was in the medical field right now, like how would we manage this, right? Then his coaching career, and mine just kind of like started to develop into something that I never thought it would be, which was photography. And
Yep.
so I have this biology degree, and I have a thriving photography business. So, which is to say that, like, you're gonna, if you are open enough to going to where you're called, you're gonna find your place, right? Like, you're gonna find what works, and it works best for our family. I'm able to be at our kids' things, run them, like do as much work or as little as I want, depending on the season that we're in. So I always tell him I'm super jealous that like he knew what he was passionate about. He knew what he was called for, and he went right into his calling, and there was no like question about it, right? Like, I mean, if anyone has spent any time with him, then they know that like he is where he is supposed to be, right? And then so that's like I just enjoy watching him in that aspect. I enjoy watching him speak to the team before some practices. Enjoy watching him um, crack up with you guys and give you these experiences outside of like the norm. Like, there's not a lot of coaches that would leave the airport, with 6 hour layover, go climb camelback with a bunch of you guys, and then like go back home, right? Like, there's just he really cares about also giving you guys like those memories. So that's fulfilling for like me to watch. But also like I love the relationships that I've been able to develop with each one of you. Being in the room the past 2 years, even more so. And being able to like see you through not just my photography lens, but actually see like more of the behind the scenes. And it really helps me know like we're doing the right thing, like he's doing the right thing, like this time that he's spent away from us or away from our kids or missing flag football games or whatever he's missing tournaments, that like it is making a difference. And so sometimes when you're not able to see everything that's gone into the behind the scenes or watched a guy work his way back from multiple surgeries, to get back on the mat, then you don't understand the depth that it took to do that and the people that it took around and the mental load that these coaches are able to help with, right? Like, so if you don't see that, a lot of times as a mom and a wife, you're seeing really just like how much they're gone, how much is put on you to handle everything else. And so I am thankful for the relationships that I've built with you guys because it has made a difference in how I see his job, how I see like my role here. I used to question like, what was I called for? What was I called for? And it was perfect because um, Lynn Troutman said to me, she was like, what if you are just like, you keep looking for this, like, what are you called for? Like, what if it's where you are right now? Like, your job is to be his wife and do these things so that he can go and carry out his calling. Like, and I think sometimes that's we as like mothers too, it's probably going a little too in depth, but you have a little bit of like an identity crisis, so you're kind of like, oh my gosh, now I'm just a mom, like I'm Hayden and Hendrix's mom, I'm Doug's wife, and you kind of lose a little bit of yourself, and so there's this like longing of like, what am I supposed to do, where am I supposed to go? And this like it gives me that a little bit back, as to like, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And you know these arguments that we had, or him missing this or that, or not telling me he's going to go recruit one night and till he's on the road, like it's worth it. These guys appreciate it, and so it makes a big difference. But then and then I would say lastly, like just the relationships that you guys have built with our children. I think that a huge part of our girls being able to come along in their journey is the fact that they are brought into that room and they're constantly surrounded by people that are new or different or saying hi to them, and these social interactions that they may have not gotten outside of the room. And I think that on the flip side of that, it's fun to me watching you guys' reactions when we do bring them in and they run through the middle of practice and through the middle of two guys wrestling and jump over another guy, and and it just kind of lightens the mood a little bit and reminds people that like it's not, this is not your whole life. This is a small part of your life. And yes, you want to accomplish everything that you possibly can during this time, but outside of that, there's so much more that you're going to do and so much more that's still available to you, opportunity wise, outside of wrestling.
You talked about being like content with Doug being away and you being able to like see that, right? And I feel like that might be a hard thing to manage sometimes. So I guess how do you handle that challenge of demanding coaching schedule, and it's not even necessarily demanding because he wants to do it, right? He cares about it. So
Yeah.
demanding in a good way.
Right, right. Um, and there's plenty of things that, that most head coaches would say that there's things that they don't care for, that they have to be at, like certain meetings or, paperwork or whatever that takes up his time too. But I would say the biggest difference is I have about 3 to 4 good girlfriends that are head coaches' wives too, that I speak to, or coaches' wives, and that they all share the same struggles, right? Like we're all home with our kids, or we're working with kids, and you're trying to manage this, like you want to be a part of your husband's life and know what's going on and help him in any capacity, and at the same time, like you have kids or a job or a career that you're also trying to care for and get better at. I mean, I want to grow my business, like he wants to be better at his coaching, right? So like we're both working in these in different areas, and so I would say the biggest thing that's helped me is had um, those women that understand our life, and are able to understand when I say like, man, I'm really struggling this week, like Kristen Metcalf and Kylie Gray and Jessica Scott, are all people that I talk to probably regularly about this life, and we joke about like you've got dinner finally prepared, and he messages and says like, hey, by the way, I'm running 2 hours away to see this kid at a club practice, right? And but so I would say that's the biggest thing for me. And consistently communicating with Doug about how I feel, if I'm struggling. Like season can be like it can be hard, I love you boys, but you are 33, needy individuals, and not needy in a bad way, but like, right, like we've created this we like laugh, like we've created this like monster in a sense, right? Like we want you to come to us anytime that you need something. And sometimes that can be hard, right? Because that can mean like, hey, you've got several classes and you need to get an extra workout in, or Sunday where I'm thinking we're gonna have like a home day, he's going in and wrestling like 3 guys. So it just kind of ebbs and flows, but communication is probably like a big thing. Even though sometimes we suck at it, we continue to work on it. And great therapist is probably like another crucial part of life.
Yeah, no kidding. Um, and I guess the other thing I heard you talk about was just being more than a mom or a wife. And I definitely think that you have like shown your worth, I guess. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
how to explain it or not, but it's like you show that you care so much. You come in, you also are a part of it, and I think we all see you more than just a mom or Doug's wife, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So,
I appreciate that.
and there's a lot of like pressure too that comes with it. I mean, you see different people in the stands yelling at Doug, or people attacking on Twitter, and you've talked about this being your big family, and it's like, man, I'm just furious
Yeah.
because of all these different people. So how do you handle the pressure and the expectations that come with Doug's
Um,
Doug's position?
you mean without throat punching everybody? Doug
Yeah,
will,
I mean,
Doug will, Doug will call me some days, like he'll be at the office already, and he'll text me like, "Hey, how's your morning going?" And I'll be like, "I'm just trying to fight the internet." And he'll be like, "How's that working out for you?" Like it never fails. This is literally our exact conversation. How's your morning going? I'm fighting the internet. How's that working out for you? It's never like good, you know. And but I know that he like appreciates that side of me, that like mama bear kind of coming out, and it can be hard. Like it's harder now that I travel with you guys some to take photos and do like the socials, that I am on press row and I can't say anything. Like I'm not supposed to like, yell back at these people, even though maybe at Wisconsin I did because it was the end of the season and I just was done. But
Yeah.
um that's probably like the hardest. And sometimes people don't know that you're his wife. And so they'll just like say something in front of you and you're like you don't know how to react, right? You're like, that's my husband, so, and it's hard because, you run into areas where with creating this big family, right? Like I try to get to know the parents, right? Like I want them to be able to reach out to me. And I feel like a lot of them do because they don't want to bother their college son, which I totally understand, who's trying to make weight, right?
Yep.
They're like, I dealt with that all the way through high school. I don't want to deal with it in college and ask him a question right now. But it can be hard because maybe that kid's not going to start this week. Maybe that kid's battling for a position, and that is where I like don't ask Doug questions so that like I can genuinely be like, I don't know, like I'm here to support everyone, but I have no idea like what's going on as far as like coaching decisions, that kind of thing. Like I don't have a place in that.
Yep.
But yeah, it can be difficult. But I try to keep it I would say like manageable, like and understand that like a lot of these people like they have no idea who we are like personally. You know what I'm saying? And the
Hmm.
same goes for me, right? Like there's a kid on the mat and I literally am like, I can't stand you. Like I literally cannot stand you. Then I meet him and he's like the nicest kid ever and like gives me a hug or is like, hey, like, I love your family. And I'm like, what? Like I just wanted to fight you. Like I wanted to air fight you from the stands 5 minutes ago? So you have to understand that a little bit of that is just competition, and that,
Yep.
right after the mat, like for instance, we went to Wisconsin this year and one guy told me he waited all year to sit in his mat side seats until Doug came. Like he waited all year, never sat in them until this match, right? Just to yell at Doug. And I'm like, okay, great. And then someone else was like, oh, I sold my tickets because I could knew that like this person paid me double just to sit there because your husband was coming, you know? And they're like right here, right? Like I mean they're like literally
Oh
within
yeah.
earshot, arm reach. And I tell Doug all the time, like between that and Missouri is another place, that Missouri
Hmm.
and they're like sitting right there beside him. Like
Yep.
you could hold hands. That's how close you are. You could rub shoulders. And I tell him all the time, I'm like, you're so much of a better human than I am because I'm like trying to fight someone sitting on the ground with my camera. And he is like, literally, like, the guy's like, take a shot. And he's like, yeah, I wish they would too. Like, I mean, he kind of makes friends with them and he understands that it's part of competition and that's the environment that you want to create because it creates a healthy environment for the sport and grows it. But he's
Yeah.
way, way better at managing that stuff way more than I am.
um, can you share like a memorable or inspiring like experience that you've had, whether it's coming along or just watching from the stands, or I mean, really anything that you find memorable being the coach's wife.
Oh gosh. Well, there's a lot. I would say one of the biggest was obviously like Drew Foster, winning his title and we're all up in the stands and like me and Holly and Krista were like all together and we all go with a group of people that have been with us for gosh, they've gone to nationals with us for like 10 years, and we're all crying, and you're hugging all the fans. And like, I love that aspect. That will stand with me like for forever, right? And like being able to see Doug after that and hug him because it had been such a long wait. And so that will be something that will be like one of those that I will, always remember. Another one I would say was like this year, and I got to be on the floor at nationals and take pictures this year, and it was so like interesting, right? Like it's a completely different feel and whatnot. And when Parker made the finals, I got to walk down the hall, and he grabs my phone to be like to look up his song to make sure they have the right one, and he's like kind of carried away to do all this stuff, but like being able to give him a big hug, and then Doug, being able to hug Doug like right then in that moment, and those things are like super rewarding, right? That you're like, this is why we do what we do, right? Like, and then also on the flip side, like uh the hard parts, like watching Kale in the back hallway and taking that photo and knowing that didn't really know when or how I would share it with him. I waited for a long time to share it with him, and hoping that it would be one of those aspects that like he looked back on and used it as motivation, but
Hmm.
also knew that like no matter where he was, like he was going to have a coaching staff that cared for him, that would come and find him, and they cared about his well-being, you know and it wasn't just when he was doing well, right?
Yep.
And so those aspects, for sure. And then just any of the like little, like anytime you guys come over, there's always something that's like memorable,
Oh yeah.
whether it's like last minute wiffle ball game, whether it's you and Goldhofer sitting in the floor coloring with the girls, like right in the middle of the kitchen, and them, not even like that's when they weren't even interacting with people, but you guys were trying so hard just to sit down with them, and like those memories, and just how I feel like we've done a good job of or Doug's shown a good job of like showing up for people, and then watching you guys repeat that, when his mom
Yep.
passed, the team came, like, where he's taken the team several times to go visit people, and then like when it came down to like one of the hardest times in his life, watching everyone come and support him. So um those are always like super memorable things.
Yeah, he always says you can't beat showing up.
Can't beat it.
So, um,
I try to tell him that at like 9 a.m. in the morning when the girls are up and I want to. I'm like, you can't be showing up for them right now.
yeah, I'm sure that always works, doesn't it?
Can't be
S-
showing up folding laundry.
Yeah, that's his favorite thing too.
Oh.
So through all these experiences that you've talked about with Doug and even you as an athlete, how do you try to or hope to instill those values and life lessons into your kids?
Oh, Josh. I would say that one of the biggest things that I feel we do a really good job of, but it's also really hard, is having constant conversations with our kids. Um, I always tell people, if you're like, if you're really trying to parent, it is really hard. The same as like if you're really trying to be in a productive, like successful marriage, it is hard. Like, because you're constantly seeing what works, what doesn't work, um, and just, I mean, with our kids, especially our boys, the nice thing is that they have about 33 examples right in front of them. And sometimes those examples can be like great examples. Sometimes those examples can be like, hey, we're going to learn from this, examples. But we do really try to like sit down and talk with them. Um, we also have like both aspects, right, of parenting. So like Doug was at the absolute top of wrestling. Like how could you can't get, any better than making the Olympic team, right? And I was like the complete opposite, right? Like I walked on at Virginia Tech. I knew that I wouldn't be a starter. I found my place in my role on the team of where I could contribute, and I had to be a little bit like content there with also the sense of constantly trying to work to be better that if there was a chance, right? And so being able to them to have both aspects to look at, and knowing that like their journey is their journey. Like our kids have always been not really fully aware of like Doug's accolades because we never really made it about that. And Doug is very humble, and it took me years for him to just sit out like 3 awards that are in our house. Like, it just took us that long and him that long to like accept it. And I think part of it was that he didn't want them to feel like that's something they had to live up to. And also maybe coming to terms with like he didn't accomplish everything that he wanted, but like still being proud of what he did accomplish. And I don't think that there's anybody in wrestling that can say that they accomplished every single thing that they wanted. It's just how you guys' minds work too. Um, and then also, he just never really liked it being about himself, and I really tried to explain to him that like this is celebrating something that you worked hard for. Like it's not a bad thing. And so after putting a trophy out and him hiding it a few times, we finally, came to the conclusion that like it was good for you guys to see that because that's what you're striving for, right? Is
Yep.
is some of these things. But so lots of conversations, lots of acknowledgement that like their path is their path. It's not ours. It's not mine to live out because I didn't achieve that much. It's not theirs, Doug's to live up to because he's been, where they haven't been yet. But really using this as like a learning example of like, hey, it's not going to be super easy. Yes, you're gifted with an athletic ability, but that doesn't mean anything if you're not putting in the work and effort behind the scenes to excel from that. It's only going to get you so far, and you've got to want to do it. So I would say a lot of that, and then just anything from um also not just talking about sports, but talking about like real life struggles, mental health. I've had like my own mental health struggles, and it took me, I wasn't until I was like maybe 34, that I realized like, man, there's, I could really use some help in these areas. And now being able to be so open with it, it allows our kids this safe place to be open with how they feel. And it's not weird, and it's not looked at as like something that's bad or you don't have your life together. No one has their life together. There's just people that hide it really well, you know?
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
and so and so it's important for us to talk to our kids about that. And I feel like that's made a difference because um, it's really changed how they have viewed mental health. And when they need help, they ask for it. And I hope that when they're in their adult life or in they're in college and they need something, that they know that they're going to go and ask for help or go see someone. And then when they're able to recognize it, if their spouse has struggles, that they're able to empathize with it more so. So I would say some of all those like life skills, a lot of conversations happen and a lot of examples are used from our own life and those that are like close in our circle around us.
Yeah, that's real good that you can be honest about that because I think that's something especially young kids can resonate with. It's like, man, my mom goes through this. Like,
Mhm.
wow, I didn't realize what she went through. So it's okay if I have my struggles too, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I think the hardest thing too is like, if they can see that like wow, like she's struggling this week and then she came out the other side of it, then when they're
yep,
struggling, they can see that like I'm going to come out the other side of this. And I think that's the scariest thing about mental health struggles is that when you're in it, sometimes you just can't see the other side. And you can't see how long it's going to take to get there. And so it can be a really like dark and heavy place because you're just not sure like why do I feel like this? There's guilt for feeling like that. Especially like me, I'm sitting there like, man, there's a lot of people that would love to have our life, 4 kids. There's people that can't have kids. We have our health, all these things. Like, what do I have to be upset about? But then recognizing that, like, that's not my fault, and that my brain is wired a certain way and that I need to work through it. And everybody works through things differently. And so, but that was hard part of it because I didn't want my kids to think like, oh, so you feel this way and like we caused this or something. And but at the same time, I wanted to share with them because I wanted them to be aware at a young age that, like, when these feelings come up, let's give you tools to be able to handle them so that when you are 33, that you already have this huge tool belt of things and ways to recognize it and ask for help and everything that I could possibly give you so that you don't get to where, I was or where someone else was, and you're sitting there wanting to ask for help, but not really sure how to.
Yeah. Um, so you talked about being open to where you're called and just finding your place. And you said that you found your place as a photographer. If you want to talk a little bit about your photography business and maybe how it started, and you said it wasn't something you were always interested in, but
Yep. So I always loved taking pictures, but I never thought of it as like I would go into something like that. I really enjoyed medicine. I really enjoyed science. I did things that put me on track for that. I had a friend who passed away when we were 15 that I played softball with, and that's who our Jenna is named after. And she died of a brain tumor, and that really like propelled me towards medicine even more. And I wanted to go into pediatric oncology and all these things. And then you get into school, and I mean, there's different things that you realize that, like, hey, I'm not great at this, or it's going to take a lot of work to really get here. And then passions change, life changes. I didn't see myself, marrying a wrestling coach from Iowa, and I did, but I really enjoyed the fact that I got to be at home with our kids a little bit more. And I continued to take pictures all the time. And I told Doug, I was like, I should just like take, be it like take pictures for a living, like for how much I do it and I enjoy it. And so a friend of ours gave me, I bought like a camera from them for like $150 or something, and it sat in our closet for probably 6 months. And then I finally got it out, and then being a little bit of the perfectionist that I am, once I decide to do something, then like I want to be the best at it, then I
yep.
really started doing the research behind it. Like, how can I teach myself? How can I get better at this? What editing tools do I need to learn? And so I just slowly built it between asking other photographers questions, asking um, his cousin's husband questions about like what technology and computer would I need and things like that, to Google and Pinterest and YouTube. Then I just did a lot of trial and error. And you can see, like, if you ever travel back to like my old pictures, I like cringe. Sure every photographer does. But I slowly just continued to get better and put myself in positions that would force me to be better. So, like, if I needed to be better at lighting, then I accepted a wedding where the reception was going to be in a dark lit place so that I had to like learn, right? And if I really wanted to kind of like be crazy, then I accepted like Santa pictures, which were also entertaining and also like extremely hard. And
hmm
so I just continued to put myself in positions that really pushed me to get better and forced me to learn new parts of the trade. And so instead of like standing back from those positions and being like, well, no, I'm just going to take pictures outside, you know, then
Yep.
I, learned how to take pictures inside. So I started my business probably more in like 2015, 2016, and was just kind of taking some pictures for some families and local friends. And then like a friend was like, would you do a wedding? And I was like, that's kind of crazy, but sure, you know. And they, gave me like really low expectations, which made it, better. And then, just so on and so on until I got to a point where um, I was like, took on too much in a way, at a little bit of burnout. How to do scale back and figure out what do I really want to do? Where do I really want to put my work, my efforts, my passion? And, in the last 2 years, I've really been able to come in the room and shoot photography for you guys, photos for you guys, and a lot of dimly lit gyms and trying to figure out also like what I'm passionate about, which is telling a story through photos and also capturing these like moments that tell those stories. So
Hmm.
that has been something that I've really, really enjoyed the most out of my photography has been able to go to the meets and capture you guys doing what you love.
Yeah, so you talked a lot about just, I mean, being open and being kind of coachable to just getting better and really trying to perfect your craft. So, would you have any sort of tips or advice for any aspiring photographers who are looking to improve their skills?
Um, I would say trial and error is going to be your best friend. It's also going to be like the scariest thing, but just grab your friends and go out and try to take pictures different times of day. Continuing your education. I still get on and listen to other photographers' videos or education series that I purchase and follow. Um, and I would say more than anything, like just be willing to try. I think sometimes that's the hardest thing, and I'm the same way when it comes to things. Is like I stand back and I want to be like the best at it right away, right? And then you're frustrated when you aren't. And,
Yep.
and unfortunately, I can see that pour down into my children a little bit. Um, so it's interesting as an adult, but it's another example of showing your kids that, like, when you're passionate about something, then you can go after it and you can, I mean, this is something that I didn't know how to do. They've watched me start to learn videography now and they get excited when they'll say like, oh, that is cool, mom, and now they're starting, especially the boys. The girls are still young, like they want to see pictures of themselves, but like the boys can like actually appreciate when I take like a cool photo or how I edit it, there, and that makes me excited because I mean, who else do you want to impress but your own children, right?
Yep.
And so I would say just go out and try. It doesn't have to be some fancy camera. A lot of people ask me all the time, like, oh, what lens is that? What camera is that? And I did too. But when I started with like the camera that the friend had told me that you could buy at Best Buy. And I really learned how to take pictures in manual. And then once I did that and was comfortable with it, then I started upgrading my equipment.
Well, there you go. If you need any tips, just ask Allison.
Right. She'll get back to you in 7 to 10 business days.
Yeah. So I mentioned it at the beginning, but Allison also has a page named Graceful Detours, and we've talked a little bit about the communication aspect that she has with her husband and also her kids, and being able to recognize mental health. Um, so I've heard you talk, and I've seen you talk about your story being someone else's survival guide. Um, how have you used not only your pictures, telling your story through the lens and capturing those moments, to be able to um, use them and tell your story also on a page, being able to inspire others or just having awareness for things going on in your life and being able to really be someone else's survival guide.
I think the biggest thing right now is in our world in general, people seek, authenticity. And obviously, you can't say you're authentic. That's up to someone to decide if you're authentic. And my husband made a good point in saying that like, really it's up to someone else to look at you and see like, did your actions meet your words, right? And to an extent, all of us are hypocritical, but I really try to open up, because we were meant to do this world together, like, as a community. And although social media was meant to bring us closer together, and in ways it has, my family is all in Virginia. They're able to, see day to day like what we're doing. It also creates a separation between us, right? Because everybody looks at social media, they see people's highlight reels, they see only the good stuff. And I wanted to just bring awareness to the actual like life aspects that, yeah, we have a lot of great things in our life, but we're also, just like everyone else, where we struggle in our marriage, we struggle in parenting, we struggle in, self-care for ourselves, we struggle in not like, putting everything into our careers, and then, uh, giving whatever was left back to our families. Like, so I really wanted a space that I could write out my thoughts and then have people, be able to relate. One of the biggest things I feel like about mental health struggles is, and I know like for me, when I am struggling, the biggest like thought in my head is like, no one else is going through this,
Yep.
like no one understands, and it can be like a lonely spot to be in. And so I thought, you know what, if I share some of the things that we struggle with, how we got through them, or how we're working on them and we're not even through them, then it leaves a spot for these people that are in that of like, how do I do this? I feel so alone, I'm doing this by myself, or no one else is dealing with this, so it must be a me problem. They see these, um, posts and they're like, oh my gosh, they're going through it too. Or, man, like I had no idea that she struggles with mental health. And until I put it out there, that I did, it was amazing, like the response back that I got. That, or the response back that I got that like me and Doug do marriage counseling. It's like the best example someone gave me was like, right, like it's a car, and you're not going to take your car and like not get its oils changed every so often, right? Like we
Yep.
enter different parts of our parenting, like you're going to have to kind of get back on track of like, okay, how are we going to handle this? Okay, like I'm feeling like that as we enter different seasons of life. We're in teenagers right now, and we're in small children. We know how to do the small children, but the teenagers, right? Like sometimes it's sitting down with someone else and discussing like, hey, how can we be better, for them? How can we be better examples for them? So, those were two of the biggest posts that I got, like the biggest response back from people of like, man, I needed to hear this, or me and my husband are really struggling. And, now that he sees that you guys are going to therapy, like he said he'd be open to it, right? And, so anything like that. And then also, I mean, I don't write to just write. So you won't find post after post after post on my page, because it really is when it like comes to me. And that sounds really like cheesy, but it's, you can tell, when it like just flows. Like I, sit in a quiet spot, it just comes out. It's really easy to write. I'm not trying to like think of like what to write about or anything. And I do that, and then we share what it's like, being parents to kids in sports right now, dealing with their mental, like their sports struggles, the wanting to be a perfectionist, and at the same time, like, maybe when they're struggling for just a win, right? And how we're handling it. Or, how parents, like, you go into a tournament and you expect your kids to perform one way, and they they do the exact opposite. And dealing with that as a parent too, right? Because you're you're silly to think that like you're the only parent that's sitting there like fighting that urge of wanting to say something to your kids like, how did you not win that match? Or why did you make that choice to go down right there? um and not upset about performance in some way, and then trying to figure out where's that stemming from. right? Is that stemming from like you're actually upset at how they performed because they didn't give like good attitude or effort? Or are you upset about how they performed because that might be a reflection on what you can put on social media, right? Because if you go and look, a lot of times people don't share how their kids did when they had a bad tournament, right? And so I just kind of create a space where just share like us going through some of those struggles so that people understand that they're not the only ones. Maybe it gives them some ideas of things to, of how we've worked through it and things that worked and didn't work. And maybe they'll take the things that worked and see if they work with their children or their spouses and then go from there.
Yeah, it's definitely cool to see and read your posts when you do end up posting them, and it's definitely inspired me a little bit to want to share my story a little more too. So you talked about a little bit more about your kids like competing and stuff like that. What is it like watching your boys compete, and what do you and Doug grade them on?
We really only grade them on two things, which is their attitude and effort. If they have a good attitude, keep composure. That's a big thing we worked on in the basement, in their basement battles together. Like, if you cannot punch your brother, then you're probably not going to punch an opponent out on the mat, you know? If you can shake your hand after losing to your brother, then you can probably shake someone else's hand because no one knows, how hard it is to congratulate your sibling who just beat you than someone who's a sibling that does that same sport. And I'm pretty sure you know that feeling.
Oh yeah,
And so that's probably our biggest thing is that we grade them on is attitude and effort, holding them accountable to things that they say that they want to do. So if one of my kids says, I want to, um, Hayden, right? Like he wanted to be held back this year. He wanted to be held back. He wanted a year of growth, and to learn. And I was like, okay, these are the things that you've told us that you want to do. We're going to hold you accountable to those things, though. So, are you getting your lifts in? Are you doing your work? Have you shown up to your job? And so, I would say attitude, effort, and then just accountability. It is hard watching your kids compete. No parent wants their kid to lose, right? No kid wants their and no parent wants their kid to fail. And at the same time, like you're trying to accept that failure is still okay, and you're trying to teach them that failure is still okay.
yeah,
Now, there's a difference between like failing and not caring that you failed, like rolling over, right? And fighting and then realizing that like someone might have been better than you that day. Like your best was not the best that day, or that you're going to have an off day. And that doesn't mean that you should just quit the sport altogether, right? Or quit what you're doing. If that was the case, none of us would be doing anything, right? We would have all quit everything that we have ever tried.
yep,
But that's important to us is just that, that they understand that they're going to fail a lot more than they're ever going to succeed. They're going to practice a lot more than they're ever going to compete, and that they're coachable, that they're held accountable, and that they have a good attitude and effort when they go out there.
preach.
It's a lot easier to preach than when I'm sitting in the stands and I'm like, oh, you know.
Yeah,
But
oh yeah.
I usually do photos and videos so that I don't um, get too involved. I've figured out that it's kind of hard to yell and take a picture at the same time.
So you mentioned the basement battles a little bit. I'd say one of two of your guys' like family fan favorites. I think that and the Big Red Bull probably were the
Oh yeah.
two. I don't know. Maybe there's something else, but when did those start? How did they start? And what is your favorite basement battle?
Oh geez. They started like the kids were. I mean, they've grown up around the sport, right? They've watched people wrestle in the room. They've gone to the meets, all that stuff. So it was just like a matter of time before they started grabbing each other. We actually just sat down and me and the boys watched on like my like Facebook memories them wrestling, and Hendrix is like not even two. It was just yesterday, I think. He's not even two, and him and Hayden are wrestling in the room. and Hendrix is throwing nasty front headlocks. Like Hendrix laughing as he's like, I think I throw a better headlock then than I do now, you know? And and so then it would just kind of move into the house, and then it was like the living room, you know, battles. And then when we moved into this house and we put actual carpet in the basement, then it was like game on, right? And they loved it because they got to put on singlets, and we were lucky enough that we had guys that we knew, or people that we knew at clubs that would send them singlets, and you know, and they would put the singlet on, and then they would ask for like a walkout song, or they'd ask for Doug to like announce them, you know, in the red corner, you know. And it just was so fun, and we made it fun until you know someone was bleeding, or someone had a season-ending injury every time, you know, or someone didn't want to shake a hand because they lost.
Yeah.
Um, but it was just fun. Doug let them do whatever. It was like no holds bar. There was no rules in the basement apparently. There was like one rule, like you couldn't kick, you know, because you could really hurt somebody if you kick. And especially if you're in the if you're on the floor kicking upright. So we were like, you can't kick. But
Yeah.
so I started putting it on like Periscope through Twitter, and then people would comment and watch and just like laugh that like they were up like wrestling at night, you know, and they'd come in maybe with a little black eye here and there, and so it was enjoyable, but there was a lot of lessons learned in that basement as to like what was appropriate, what was not appropriate. Not that like crying's not appropriate or anything, but like just being able to like compose yourself in a match, that if you're down, you know, by four, five, six, that like you're not automatically counting yourself out. And working a little bit on some of those like emotional maturity type aspects. And we see a difference, especially in their first couple of years of wrestling. We saw a big difference of like, you know, a kid would throw a fit against them, and our kids would be like, what is happening? What are they doing? You know?
Hmm.
And I'm sitting there like, you did that. You just did it in our basement, not out here at, you know, postseason nationals, you know.
Yeah.
So um so working through that, and it was just fun. And I loved watching Doug watch his boys like kind of do what he was doing, right? And kind of coming up in that wrestling world and enjoying it. And so I enjoyed watching him watch them, even though he wasn't instructing them. Because even I would be like, why don't you just teach them like down position? And he'd be like, ugh, you know, like just let them have fun, you know? And I mean, they'd kind of get in the down position. He'd like make a whistle sound and they'd be up, you know, and we'd just have couch cushions around like
Yep.
corners and TVs and stuff. So, but it was a really, really good time. I don't know if I have a favorite. Um, I just love watching like when they were really little, you know, like when, I mean, Hendrix is just like so tiny, but like strong as all. And Hayden's still Hayden, like he's still smiling the entire time that he's like wrestling. And so to watch that's like super cool. And then obviously the big red ball is a was a big deal in our house, and we did that with the boys. Doug would throw the big ab ball at the boys, and we have some really funny videos of that. But then when the girls came up, it was like absolutely hilarious. And so they had no idea. Now they know. Like, I mean, I want to do one recently, but we have to do like a sneak attack. Like, he's gonna have to come out of like a side door or something, because they see that ab ball and they like immediately sit down on the ground because they know it's gonna launch
Oh
them.
yeah. Oh yeah. They know.
Yep, yep.
I think one of my favorite pictures that I remember, like when the boys were really young and I was watching those basement battles, is when they both had on the singlets and they both had the mullets and they were like doing this to the back of their singlets.
Yes. Oh man, those mullets. I think they're probably regretting them now. Now that they're
Yeah.
getting to the age where their friends can like go and search and find an old picture of them and post it. But oh man, yeah, they had some sweet mullets.
Yeah. I guess I just got a couple more things.
Yeah.
The last thing is really like just some rapid fire questions, but before that, want to talk a little bit about every piece matters and how you've um I don't like used in a good way, like your daughters and what they struggle with, and then being able to you know, do your nonprofit like you talked about and get
Yep.
those boards out for.
So our girls were diagnosed with autism in 2019, March of 2019, right before they turned 2. And we decided right then that like it was going to be something that we kind of like attacked just like anything else in our life, and that we would do whatever we could, give them any opportunity that we could so that they would have the same opportunities as the boys. And so when they first started, they could not speak. And so they could only talk by using pictures or a speech device, sign language, and then some verbal. And obviously now they can speak. They're still in speech. But it took, I mean, it's been 4 years of therapy, and it took quite a while for them to be able to communicate their needs and wants. And so I saw that there was a playground communication board, and I thought, man, if we could get these into every school playground, then one, we start figuring out that like it's not odd. It's not something that they haven't seen before when a kid uses pictures or a device to talk. It's just, oh yeah, that's Jenna and Lennon. They've always used those speech devices to speak. And also, like, where else do you meet kids first? You meet them on the playgrounds, right? You make your friendships on the playground. So I wanted an opportunity that they could start a friendship, and realize that like not everybody communicates the same, and that just because they don't communicate the same doesn't mean they can't communicate. And so we want to give that opportunity. A lot of the other part of it is that in Iowa we have cold winters, and a lot of these speech devices are like little iPads. They look like this. So, if they have like a speaker on the back and a handle, and if they go out in the snow, well, what kid's going to carry this around and then with their glove be able to sit there and touch, the spaces? So we wanted them on playgrounds so that if they needed something and the teacher couldn't understand or their peer couldn't understand, that they could go up and touch the picture and show exactly what was needed. The other thing is that when you are able to communicate, then you start to see a lot of behaviors go down, right? Because a lot of the behavior is they're frustrated that you can't understand them, that they have something to say. So we wanted to develop a nonprofit that would give away these boards to schools. So we would raise money, we give boards away to schools, they put them up in their playgrounds, they put them up in their gymnasiums, classrooms, and then recently we went to like smaller communication boards, which look like this, that kids can take home. They can carry from class to class with them. They can carry to uh, their specials classrooms. And sometimes it's not even kids that can't necessarily communicate verbally, but they're just struggling that day. Like they're struggling to communicate how they feel. Maybe something traumatic happened. Maybe something just is going on at home. And so we wanted to give them the ability to communicate, because everyone deserves that right. And so we sell fun t-shirts like you have on. And we do a race that's going to be this August, that we raise money at. And then we sell our Team Shit Show apparel that goes towards that. And all of the money raised goes towards buying communication boards. So we've bought over 300 boards and dispersed them all over the US. We focused on getting all of our local schools and schools in Iowa. And then when people reached out to us outside of Iowa, we would send them and just get them up, and so that other kids would have the opportunity to use them to communicate.
Yeah, it's been really cool seeing that journey and different things that you guys have done to just try and spread the awareness and raise some money to be able to get those boards out to as many places as possible. Like this year, going to Hertz and buying a few donuts with Jen and Len on them, and then knowing that a dollar of every donut or whatever it was went to Every Piece Matters. So
Yeah,
that was really
and
cool.
we wouldn't be able to do that without the community that we have here too, that have embraced the girls and have embraced becoming more inclusive and more aware. Hertz is a place that's close to us. Our girls love donuts. I love donuts. And we know the family really well. And they have their own communication board in there so that kids can walk up and touch which donut they want. And it also has like fun words like donut emergency and things. So, and like what drinks. And it gives them the opportunity to start that conversation of like, why is this here, and like who uses this, and realize that like everyone's different in their own way, but it doesn't mean that they're any less than anyone else.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so Parker had a few questions. Just you playing softball. Why didn't you join the wiffle ball game? And then he wanted to know if you could strike dugout.
Oh, Parker. It depends on how I'm throwing. One, I feel like I don't really have like a good control over if I were to try to throw underhanded, Doug. I threw a lot of batting practice in college, a lot, and I pitched in high school, and so uh, I don't know if I would have a lot of control over a wiffle ball. Um, Overhand, it would just depend. I don't know. Doug's pretty like savvy. Like he was like all state baseball, so you know he was a big deal. So I'm not really sure. And then I didn't join the game, one because I don't think I could keep up with you guys' shit talking, and two, um, I also feel like I would be like Carson and strike out, and all of you guys would be making fun of me the whole time. So I'd rather stand back and get video that I can show making fun of all of you.
There you go. All right, so a few rapid fire questions.
Okay.
What's your go-to family meal?
Oh, geez. Like my family or team meal? Like my family, we're probably like
Yeah.
easily we have spaghetti, tacos, any of those are like our like go-to like quick family meal.
Okay. And then what about like
Team meal?
team meal? Yeah.
Oh, well, I've learned that now I should just like order out because it's way easier and then just fix the sides. But Noodles and Company, you guys always seem to enjoy, and we always, you know, everybody comments and loves. So that would probably be like one of my easier ones would be Noodles and
Yeah, but
Company.
the Thanksgiving meals are always fire though, and
I was gonna
Christmas.
say, I'm like, yeah, no, home cooked Thanksgiving for sure. So I've always done that. I've always tried to cook everything from my Thanksgiving because I'm never home for Thanksgiving with my family. And so I bring all that Southern yumminess with all the extra butter and everything here,
Oh
and
yeah.
then watch you guys try to manage how to taste everything and stay on weight.
Yeah, no kidding. Um, what's your favorite place to eat in Cedar Falls?
Oh, probably Mulligan's.
All right.
We
And
love their
then
barbecue.
Virginia or Iowa?
Ugh. I mean, I feel like I have to say Iowa. Like my family's here. I live here. But I
Hey,
do
that was
miss,
another Parker question. I had to throw it in.
of course it was. Of course it was. Um, I miss the mountains in Virginia. But I love the sunsets here.
Yeah.
So both.
Um, and then your favorite sports team or sports teams?
Well, I don't really have a choice in this because I'm married into it. So, we're Red Sox fans for baseball. We're Steelers fans for football. I still cheer for Virginia Tech softball, obviously. Um, and probably still cheer for Virginia Tech football because I grew up going to those games since I was like, I think my first game I was like 4, and we had season tickets every year. And so that was such a big part of like my growing up and awesome memories that I have. And I mean, my mom, my sister, my both of my sisters, my mom and my dad and me all went to Virginia Tech.
Yeah. I mean, you got
So,
to.
right.
I grew up a Nebraska fan, so it's going to be weird when Nebraska and you and I play in the next couple years.
Right. So, and I've taken the boys back and, and taken them to a few games and stuff like that. And and taken them to like some softball, and been like, here's where your mom played, and here's where I died during conditioning. And
What's your favorite movie?
um, okay, Dead Poet Society is up there. Um, Shawshank Redemption's probably a solid choice as well.
We just watched that for the first time the other night, and
What?
it's so good.
It's so good. How can that be your first time? Um, like girly and like silly, but like know all the songs with my sisters. Grease 2 with Michelle
Oh yeah.
Pfeiffer. hmm So there's probably those three.
Okay. And then where's your favorite picture that you shot located? Do you know off the top of your head?
God, no, that's so hard.
I mean, you got to have a lot.
I have a lot. And they're like, like, and you separate it like this is my favorite picture of a person. This is my favorite picture. Um, some of the sports ones and some of the ones from Uganda are probably like my favorite because they show like so much emotion,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yep.
But I don't know if I have like a favorite. Like it would be extremely hard for me to like, or maybe I haven't taken it yet,
There you go.
right?
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for taking the time and coming on the episode. It
I
was fun
appreciate
for
you. Thanks for
sure.
having me.
It was awesome. It was an awesome episode. So thank you guys for listening to today's episode on the Elite Wrestling Club podcast. We hope you found today's episode valuable and enjoyed our exploration of Allyson Schwab. To stay connected with us, hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode. We release new content every Monday. You can leave a review on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify, and your reviews help us reach more listeners and provide valuable content as well. You can also visit the Elite Wrestling Club website and follow us on social media for questions, topic suggestions, or to connect with our community. If you would like to leave a donation or sponsor an episode, hit contact us on the Elite Wrestling Club website. Many exciting episodes are on the way, so stay tuned and join us next time for more inspiration. Thank you for being a part of the Elite Wrestling Club podcast world. Keep exploring within to inspire others.